The pale blue emergency lights flickered throughout the command module as Lyra frantically worked the failing navigation system. The small diplomatic vessel, never designed for combat, shuddered violently as it pierced the atmosphere of the uncharted blue-green world. "Computer, status report." Lyra commanded, her four-fingered hands dancing across the crystalline control interface. "Hull integrity at 42%. Life support failing. Engines offline. Emergency landing protocols engaged." The ship's AI responded with maddening calm. Lyra's iridescent scales rippled with stress patterns as she braced herself. The irony wasn't lost on her. Ambassador Lyran Vex, once the youngest member of the Cetheran High Council, now reduced to a refugee fleeing for her life. All because she dared suggest that perhaps conquering every species they encountered wasn't the wisest path for their empire. "Planetary analysis," she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Compatible gravity. Indigenous intelligent species detected. Technology level, pre-interstellar. Perfect." If she survived the crash, she'd be stranded on a primitive world with no way to call for help, not that anyone would come. The Imperator had made that abundantly clear when he sentenced her to exile. The ship screamed through cloud layers, the viewport revealing snow-covered mountains rushing toward her at terrifying speed. Lyra closed her inner eyelids in preparation for impact. The last thing she remembered was the deafening crunch of the ship's hull meeting ancient pines. Marcus Blackwood lowered his camera, frowning at the bright streak that had just cut across the Alaskan night sky. Too slow for a meteor, too erratic for a satellite. His breath formed clouds in the frigid air as he scanned the horizon, spotting a faint glow among the distant trees. "What the hell?" he muttered, reaching for his pack. 5 years in this remote cabin had taught him self-reliance, but curiosity had never abandoned him, even after he'd left everything else behind. The trek took nearly an hour through knee-deep snow, guided by the unnatural glow and the scent of burning material unlike anything he'd encountered before. When he finally pushed through the tree line into a small clearing, Marcus froze. Before him lay what could only be described as a spacecraft, sleek and organic in design, nothing like human technology. A jagged tear ran along one side, exposing strange machinery that pulsed with diminishing light. Marcus approached cautiously, photojournalist instincts kicking in as he documented the scene with his camera. Near what appeared to be the front section, he discovered an opening in the hull. Shining his flashlight inside, he expected to find empty seats or perhaps robotic equipment. Instead, he found her. The alien was humanoid but clearly not human, slender, with pale blue scales covering her body and a crest of what looked like crystalline filaments where hair would be on a human. She lay unconscious, secured in a pilot's harness, dark fluid seeping from a wound on her temple. Marcus's first instinct was to run, to pretend he'd never seen this. To call authorities. But something in her features, so alien yet somehow expressing pain in a way he recognized, stopped him. That, and the knowledge that authorities, in these parts meant people who wouldn't hesitate to dissect first and ask questions never. "Well," he whispered, carefully unfastening the strange harness, "I guess we're both a long way from home." As he lifted her surprisingly light form from the wreckage, her eyes, all three of them, fluttered open briefly. The central eye locked onto his face with unmistakable intelligence and fear before closing again. Marcus made his decision. With the alien secured in his arms, he headed back toward his cabin, the aurora borealis painting the sky above them in colors that seemed fitting for such an impossible moment. Marcus had prepared for many emergencies in his remote cabin, bear attacks, blizzards, even the occasional lost hiker, but alien first aid wasn't on that list. He placed Lyra gently on his bed, unsure whether his medical supplies would help or harm her unique physiology. The alien stirred, her three eyes opening simultaneously. The central eye, larger than the others, focused on Marcus while the outer two darted around the cabin. She attempted to rise but winced in pain. Easy, Marcus said softly, raising his palms in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. You're safe. Lyra assessed the primitive dwelling and the strange bipedal creature before her. The Cetheran database had mentioned this planet harbored intelligent life, but she hadn't expected to encounter one so soon, or to be at their mercy. Her translator implant had captured enough of the local language during her ship's descent to attempt communication. Where am I? Her voice had an ethereal quality, the translator adding a slight mechanical undertone. Marcus startled. You speak English? I adapt, she managed, pointing to a barely visible device near her temple. Translation. Still learning. Over the next few days, as Lyra recovered from her injuries, their communication improved dramatically. Marcus learned she was something like a diplomat from a vast empire called the Cetheran Dominion, an empire that had exiled her for advocating peaceful coexistence with other species. My people believe domination is strength, she explained one evening as they sat before the fireplace, the flames reflecting off her scales in hypnotic patterns. I suggested perhaps we learn from others instead of conquering them. The Imperator called this weakness. Marcus nodded, understanding all too well. Humans have similar problems. We often fear what's different. He showed her books, photographs, and videos on his laptop, explaining Earth's diverse cultures and species. Lyra absorbed everything eagerly, asking insightful questions that made Marcus see his own world from fresh perspectives. In turn, she taught him about the stars, correcting his understanding of distant solar systems and sharing stories of worlds he could barely imagine. Using components salvaged from her crashed ship, she created a holographic map of the galaxy that filled his small living room with light. This is my home system, she said, highlighting a cluster of stars. Or it was. Do you miss it? Marcus asked, noticing the ripple of melancholy colors across her scales. I miss what it could have been, she replied. Not what it became. As winter deepened, they established routines. Marcus taught Lyra to cook simple human foods compatible with her digestive system. She helped him improve his solar power system using principles from her world's technology. They worked together to hide evidence of her crash site, aware that discovery could endanger them both. One morning, while checking the modified communication device she'd built from salvaged parts, Lyra froze. What is it? Marcus asked, recognizing her expression of concern despite its alienness. A signal, she said quietly. Cetheran encrypted frequency. They're searching nearby systems. For you? She shook her head, scales darkening with worry. Not specifically. Standard reconnaissance. But if they detect any signature from my ship or technology. The implication hung between them like a shadow. If the Cetherans discovered Earth, they wouldn't come as friends. Marcus placed a hand near hers, not touching, as he'd learned her species considered direct contact intimate, but close enough to convey support. Then we'll have to be careful, he said. Very careful. Lyra looked at him, amazed again by this species' capacity for acceptance. Among her own people, she would have been surrendered immediately for the greater glory of the Empire. Yes, she agreed, her three eyes meeting his two. We will be careful together. February brought the harshest storms of the Alaskan winter. Howling winds and temperatures that plummeted to -40 degrees confined Marcus and Lyra to the cabin for weeks at a time. What could have been claustrophobic instead became an opportunity for deeper understanding. Tell me about your decision to live here, away from your own kind, Lyra asked one evening as they huddled near the wood stove. The question was direct in the Cetheran way that Marcus had come to appreciate. He stared into his coffee cup before answering. I was a photojournalist in conflict zones. I documented human suffering for years, thinking my work made a difference. His voice grew distant. Until Syria. A hospital bombing. I was taking pictures instead of helping. Afterward, I couldn't justify it anymore. Lyra's scales shifted to a pattern Marcus now recognized as empathy. You carry this like a weight, she observed. Don't you? Your exile? Yes, she admitted. But perhaps both our isolations served a purpose. They led us here. As Marcus taught Lyra about human culture and emotions, she helped him process his trauma in the logical, forthright manner of her species. Without human social conditioning, her perspectives cut through years of his self-recrimination. In turn, he showed her that the vulnerability her people considered weakness could be a form of strength. Together they ventured outside during brief clear spells. Lyra, whose homeworld was largely urbanized, marveled at Earth's untamed wilderness. The first time she witnessed the aurora borealis, her crystalline crest emanated a harmonic resonance that filled the night air, a Setharan expression of profound joy that Marcus found hauntingly beautiful. On my world, we replicate such phenomena in entertainment chambers, she explained. But this is alive. Through a modification to her salvaged tech, Lyra helped Marcus capture images beyond human visual spectrum, revealing hidden dimensions in his photography. His artistic eye, in turn, helped her see beauty where she'd been trained to evaluate only strategic value. Their evenings often ended with her recounting the socio-political complexities of distant worlds while he shared human music, art, and literature. Despite vast differences, they discovered surprising parallels between their species' histories and mythologies. One night, after Marcus explained the concept of poetry, Lyra attempted a traditional Setharan verse form translated to English. Its alien rhythm and unexpected metaphors moved him deeply. When he looked up after her recitation, he realized something fundamental had shifted between them. I am not sure I would return to my people now, even if I could, she confessed, her central eye holding his gaze while the outer ones lowered, a sign of profound honesty among her kind. Before Marcus could respond, Lyra's communication device emitted a sharp tone. She crossed to it quickly, her movements fluid despite the gravity difference she'd adapted to. The signal is stronger, she said, her scales paling with concern. A scout ship has entered your solar system. Marcus joined her, studying the holographic display he couldn't fully comprehend. How long do we have? Days, perhaps. They'll investigate the outer planets first. Her hand hovered near his, closer than ever before. Marcus, I must make a decision. If they detect me, we'll face it together, he said, finally bridging the small gap between their hands. The contact sent a visible wave of iridescence across her scales. Whatever comes next. The Setharan scout ship entered Earth orbit while a spring thaw softened the Alaskan landscape. Lyra tracked its movements using modified equipment, her scales consistently showing stress patterns that Marcus had learned to recognize. They're scanning systematically, she explained, manipulating the holographic display that showed the vessel's path. Standard protocol. They don't know I'm here yet, but any active technology from my ship could trigger recognition algorithms. Marcus studied her work with growing concern. Over the months, she had carefully powered down most of her salvaged equipment, but some systems, like her translator implant, couldn't be deactivated without cutting their ability to communicate. What happens if they find you? He asked. Lyra's central eye met his while the outer two focused on the display, a Setharan expression of divided attention during crisis. Best case, they take me back for re-education. Worst case, they recognize me as a dissident and... She didn't finish. And Earth? Her scales darkened. If they determine humans have potential technological value or military threat, they'll mark your planet for future attention. The implication hung heavily between them. Marcus had seen enough of Setharan historical records to understand what attention meant. But you could return home, he said carefully, watching her reaction. To what? Conformity or punishment? Her crest flattened, a sign of resignation. Marcus, what I've experienced here, the freedom to question, to appreciate beauty for its own sake, these are heresies in my world." A signal pulsed on her display, interrupting them. Lyra manipulated the controls with increasing agitation. "They've detected an anomaly. The crash site." Her voice remained controlled despite her scales betraying panic. "They're dispatching a surface probe to investigate." Marcus moved with decisive calm, gathering emergency supplies. "How long?" "Hours." They worked quickly, implementing contingency plans they discussed but hoped never to need. Using components from Lyra's ship, they constructed a transmitter designed to broadcast false data, suggesting her vessel had been destroyed with no survivors. The risk was enormous. Activating it could either divert the Sethrans or lead them directly to their location. As sunset painted the sky in colors that still fascinated Lyra despite their dire circumstances, they positioned the device at a calculated distance from both the crash site and cabin. "This feels like goodbye," Marcus said as they completed the final adjustments. Lyra's scales shifted through complex patterns of emotion. "It might be. If they detect me, I should surrender. It's the only way to ensure they leave Earth unmarked." "I won't let them take you," Marcus insisted. For the first time, Lyra initiated physical contact, placing her hand fully against his. The bioluminescent reaction along her scales cast a soft glow between them. "In my culture, this connection we've formed would be considered a form of spiritual symbiosis," she said quietly. "Rare even among our own kind." "In mine," Marcus replied, "we might call it something simpler." Before he could elaborate, her equipment signaled again. The probe had entered the atmosphere. "It's time," she said. Together, they activated the transmitter. Within moments, the Sethran signals shifted, indicating the probe had altered course toward their decoy. Now they could only wait, and hope the false data would be convincing enough to save them both. Summer arrived in a riot of wildflowers and midnight sun. 6 weeks had passed since the Sethran ship departed Earth's orbit, apparently satisfied with the false data from Lyra's transmitter. They had marked the system as containing no viable civilizations worth revisiting, a designation that would keep Earth safe for at least several human generations. Lyra stood on the cabin's porch, her scales reflecting the endless twilight of an Alaskan summer evening. She'd adapted her physiology as much as possible to Earth's conditions, though certain aspects, like her need for periodic exposure to specific radiation wavelengths, required ongoing technological solutions. "The transmission from the Deep Space Array just confirmed it," Marcus said, joining her. "Their ship has passed beyond the Kuiper Belt." "We did it. We've bought time," she corrected gently. "My people are methodical, not easily deterred. They will return eventually. Then we'll be ready," he replied with characteristic human optimism that once puzzled her but now she found comforting. Inside the cabin, now expanded with a workshop space, they had begun integrating salvaged Sethran technology with human components. Lyra's knowledge of advanced physics combined with Marcus's practical ingenuity had produced innovations neither could have created alone. Their immediate goal was to establish an early warning system for future Sethran incursions, but the potential applications extended much further. "I've been thinking," Marcus said as they watched a moose and her calf wade through the nearby stream. "We should document everything, your knowledge, our discoveries. Create a record for future generations." Lyra's central eye focused on him while her outer eyes took in the landscape she now considered home. "You want to prepare humanity for what's coming. Not just that. I want to share what we've learned about coexistence. About finding common ground across differences that seem insurmountable." She understood. Over the past year, they had moved from awkward first contact to mutual respect to something deeper, a connection that transcended their biological differences. What began as necessity had evolved into choice. "On my world," Lyra said, her voice carrying the melodic quality that emerged when she spoke from emotion rather than intellect, there is a concept called envashek, the joining of unlike elements to create something stronger than either alone. Like an alloy? More than that. It's considered the highest form of creation. Her scales rippled with the blue-gold pattern Marcus now recognized as contentment. What we've built here is envashek. As dusk finally deepened into a brief night, they reviewed their plans. They would venture to civilization occasionally, introducing Lyra as a researcher from abroad with a rare genetic condition, explaining her appearance while allowing them to share selective technological advances that wouldn't raise suspicion. Are you certain? Marcus asked. Once we begin this path, returning to isolation will be difficult. I was an ambassador before I was an exile, she reminded him. My purpose was always to build bridges between worlds. I'm simply fulfilling that purpose in a way I never anticipated. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her decision to align her fate with humanity's. His hand found hers in the familiar gesture that had evolved its own meaning between them. Then we begin tomorrow, he said. Above them, stars emerged, the same stars that had brought them together across impossible distances. Lyra identified constellations with both Cetheran and human names, the dual naming a symbol of the perspective they uniquely shared. Whatever challenges awaited, they would face them as neither fully human nor Cetheran, but as something new, a bridge between worlds, an unlikely alliance, and perhaps, the first chapter in a larger story of understanding that might someday span the stars.